Welcome to our Crypto News in 10, a daily podcast bringing you the latest news about crypto in under 10 minutes. It's Wednesday, January 7th, 2026. Here's what's shaking in crypto today. Ethereum just turned up the throughput dial again. Stellar is pushing privacy into its smart contract stack. A major UK bank is buying into stablecoin infrastructure. US spot Bitcoin ETFs briefly flipped red. And Ripple says it's still not going public, even after that hefty late 2025 raise. Let's unpack 5 stories that matter in about 6 minutes. Story 1. Ethereum's second blob parameter-only upgrade, BPO2, hit mainnet overnight, right on schedule. The tweak raises the per-block blob target to 14 and the maximum to 21, widening the data lanes that Layer 2 rollups use to post transaction data. It's a config-only change, but a meaningful one for fees and capacity on rollups like Arbitrum, Optimism, and Base. The Ethereum Foundation's Fusaka post set the activation for Epoch 418,072, January 7th at about 0101 UTC, and documents the step up from last month's BPO1 to today's 14 target and 21 max parameters. Translation: more room for L2s to breathe without a heavy hard fork, and another incremental step on the Peerless-powered scaling path. Why it matters? Blobs are the cheapest way for Layer 2s to publish data to Layer 1, so bumping capacity should help stabilize or even lower roll-up fees as demand surges. Because the change was pre-programmed in Fusaka, the network can ratchet throughput gradually, observe health, then decide on the next increase. If you're building on an L2, watch gas dynamics over the next week to see how quickly the savings flow through. Story 2. Stellar is making a privacy play. Protocol 25, nicknamed X-Ray, hits testnet today at 2100 UTC, with a mainnet validator vote slated for January 22nd. The upgrade adds native support in Soroban for BN254 elliptic curve operations and Poseidon hash functions, 2 workhorse primitives used across zero-knowledge systems. In plain English, verifying zero-knowledge proofs on Stellar gets faster and cheaper, unlocking private transfers, confidential business logic, and easier porting of ZK apps from ecosystems like Ethereum that rely on similar precompiles. The Stellar Development Foundation laid out the dates and the technical scope, and it's urging developers and infrastructure providers to update ahead of the votes. If you're a fintech or payroll platform eyeing on-chain settlement but needing confidentiality by default, this kind of under-the-hood capability reduces friction. It also dovetails with a broader 2026 narrative, privacy becoming a first-class feature, not an afterthought. We'll come back to that. Story 3. A big bank just bought a ticket to the stablecoin plumbing layer. Barclays has taken a stake in Ubix, a US startup that clears and reconciles stablecoins and tokenized deposits across different issuers. Think interoperability for regulated digital money. The bank didn't disclose the size, but called it its first investment linked to stablecoins and framed it as building tokenized money within the regulatory perimeter. Reuters reports Ubix launched in 2025 and has backing from Coinbase Ventures and Galaxy's venture arm. It's another data point that traditional finance isn't just exploring tokenization of assets, they're also investing in the cash leg that makes those tokenized markets settle cleanly. Barclays' digital assets lead emphasized interoperability as critical infrastructure. Exactly the kind of rails banks will need if tokenized cash and stablecoins are to plug into existing payment and securities workflows. Expect more banks to buy the picks and shovels before they issue anything themselves.
Before we continue, here's a message from our sponsors.
Need elite developers fast? Elite Coders connects you with rigorously vetted senior engineers in 24 to 48 hours. Staff augmentation, dedicated teams, or full project delivery, we've got you covered. Visit elitecoders.co to get started today.
All right, let's get back to it. Story 4. After 2 strong opening sessions to 2026, US spot Bitcoin ETFs swung back to outflows on Tuesday. Net flows totaled negative $243 million, led by a $312 million outflow from Fidelity's FBTC and $83 million from Grayscale's GBTC. BlackRock's IBIT was the lone bright spot, pulling in about $229 million and tallying roughly $888 million year to date. That's according to The Block, citing so-so value for the daily breakdown. Zoom out, and it looks more like a breather than a regime change. Flows have been volatile around round numbers, and IBT's leadership among issuers is intact. For traders, These ETF flows remain a useful tell for marginal demand. When outflows don't cascade into spot selling, it suggests rotation among products and some resiliency in direct buying. Keep an eye on whether negative days cluster or whether this was a one-off pause after early year enthusiasm. Story 5. Ripple is staying private. In a Bloomberg interview aired Tuesday, President Monica Long reiterated there's no plan, no timeline for an IPO, even after a November fundraise that valued the company at about $40 billion and brought in roughly $500 million from investors, including Fortress and Citadel affiliates. The company says its balance sheet and strategic backing let it pursue acquisitions and product expansion, stablecoins, custody, prime brokerage, without tapping public markets right now. For XRP watchers, the signal is continuity. Focus on payments and institutional infrastructure, not a 2026 listing. Taken together, today's threads rhyme. Ethereum quietly adds more data room for L2s. Stellar readies native ZK building blocks. A global bank buys into stablecoin plumbing. ETFs remind us flows can zig and zag. And one of crypto's biggest private companies says it doesn't need Wall Street access. If there's a theme for early 2026, it's pragmatic scaling and privacy moving center stage. Less hype, more pipes. Quick recap. Ethereum's BPO2 is live, lifting blob capacity to a 14 target and 21 max to help roll up scale. Stellar's protocol 25 testnet brings native ZK primitives ahead of a January 22 mainnet vote. Barclays took a stake in Ubix to build regulated tokenized money rails. US spot Bitcoin ETFs logged about $243 million in net outflows Tuesday, with IBT still pulling capital. And Ripple reiterated it has no IPO timeline despite a $40 billion valuation. We'll be back tomorrow with the next round of signals from across crypto. Thanks for listening and see you tomorrow.